Hello and welcome to this video on measuring international competitiveness. So in this video we're going to look at the different measures of competitiveness and the factors that influence them. So we've been looking at business economics and how businesses function and operate. And in this video we're going to look at how competitive are businesses on an international basis. So we're going to look at how competitive businesses are from in a particular country when trying to sell their products in the global marketplace. So let's start off with a definition of what we mean by competitiveness. Competitiveness refers to the ability of a country to sell its goods or services abroad. And what do we mean here by a country? We mean the businesses within that country. So primarily what affects this ability? Well, we would say that competitiveness is usually determined by the price and or the quality of the good or service. So it's important here when we think about competitiveness, what influences how competitive companies are within a country: the price, normally the lower price the better, and the quality, normally the higher quality the better. So let's think about what factors would influence the price of a good abroad. This depends on both the cost of manufacture, so how much it costs to make these things, and also the exchange rate, because the exchange rate will influence the price that appears in a foreign market. So what factors might influence the cost of manufacture? Well, we have a range of factors, so let's make some notes on these. An important first one is the labour costs, the labour cost per unit of manufacture compared to competitors. So what will influence labour costs? Well, generally speaking, productivity, so the output per worker. And we can often look at comparing productivity between countries by looking at the output, the GDP, and dividing it by the population per capita. So GDP per capita gives us a measure of productivity, and productivity influences unit labour costs. What determines how skillful, how productive our employees are? Well, it can be the education, the level of education and training. It can be trade union activity. So if people are often on strike a lot, then they're not going to be that productive. Labour laws, and also the level of investment. There are certain technologies that can aid productivity. Wages will also have a strong influence on unit labour costs. And what influences wages? Well, the cost of living, again productivity, again trade union activity, and labour laws, for example minimum wages and things like that. So labour costs are an important influence on the cost of manufacture, and they're influenced by both productivity and also wages. Another important influence is the cost of capital, the cost of finance. So if I'm going to buy a new machine or expand, I need to maybe take out a loan. What is the interest rate on that loan? The greater the rate of interest, the higher the costs are, the higher the cost of manufacture. Transportation costs compared to competitors will also influence the cost of manufacturing. The rate of inflation, a higher rate of inflation in the country will push up the prices of raw materials and labour, increasing the price or the cost of manufacturing the product. The level of regulations could be to do with labour market regulations or to do with quality standards. The level of taxation, this will feature into my cost base as a business. Higher levels of corporation tax mean less reinvestment and really effectively push up my costs. So we've talked about cost of manufacture. Let's also now talk about factors that influence the exchange rate. Well, traditionally the exchange rate is influenced by the foreign exchange market and the interaction of demand and supply. And when the exchange rate is determined through the interaction of demand and supply, we describe that as being a floating exchange rate. People want to buy more of that currency, to buy more products from that country, and that will drive the exchange rate up. Again, at this point it's maybe worth just jotting down spiced and Whipperdeck. What we're really interested in is the real rather than nominal exchange rate. So this is the exchange rate adjusted for inflation. And high inflation tends to weaken the exchange rate. Products are less attractive from that country if inflation is high, which drive down demand for those products, demand for that currency, and so the currency weakens in value. depreciates. The current account position may influence the exchange rate. A deficit may weaken the position because there is an increased supply of our currency and less demand for it, whereas a surplus may strengthen our currency. And finally is the government. The government may also intervene in the foreign exchange market to influence the exchange rate. When this occurs, we would say that the government is fixing the exchange rate, and we would say that that country has a fixed exchange rate. So quality is also an influence on competitiveness. We said earlier that it depends on price and or quality. Better quality products will have a competitive advantage over their rivals. Often this is an approach that developed countries can take to avoid competition with many developing countries, is to focus on products or businesses that provide high quality service or high quality products that require maybe a lot of technology or highly skilled staff to complete. This is a way of developing them from the low price and low cost businesses in developing countries. Again, quality has a link to training, education, investment and technology. The World Economic Forum produces a report every year that ranks the competitiveness of countries around the world. This is the report from 2017 to 2018, and this gives us an indication of which countries have the most competitive businesses. So if we have a look at the top 10, we can see that Switzerland is in number 1 position, suggesting that the Swiss businesses are the most competitive when we consider the range of factors that we've just looked through. Followed by businesses from the United States. I'm sure we can all name large internationally competitive businesses from the United States. Singapore, Netherlands, Germany, Hong Kong, Sweden, the UK, Japan and Finland make the top 10. At the other end of the scale, we can see some countries down here, Ethiopia for example, El Salvador, who have scored much lower in terms of their ranking. So businesses from these countries are likely to struggle to be able to sell their products abroad successfully. And there might be a range of reasons why, but effectively those reasons will influence the factors that we've spoken about already. So in this video we've looked at different measures of competitiveness and the factors that influence a country's international competitiveness. That's it. Thanks very much for listening.